People, thank you. It's great to be here. I've visited before here, and you're great people, and I'm just surprised of all the people that come. I'm just happy that you have so many problems with your kids. How about that? How many have teenagers? Raise your hands. Condolences. I can tell by the desperate looks in your faces who's got teenagers. How many have been to one of my seminars before, please? Okay, you people need to laugh at the same jokes again. Would you do that for me? People, you'll never have a greater assignment, a greater responsibility than being a father or a mother, a companion, a husband or wife. This is what life's all about. We're to learn not to acquire things in this life, but to develop relationships. And if we'll develop relationships, we'll find happiness. I'm talking about good, healthy relationships. No matter what else you get, no matter how many degrees in college or how many zeros you have after your bank account, no matter how much money you have, no matter what honors or great things you think that you've done in this world, if you're not in a position to where you're in great love with your wife and your children, and you have deep and intimate relationships with those that you love, all these other things don't matter. I've counseled with one young man in particular got $25,000 from his father for his birthday to go around the world during the summer. This was a boy about 22 or 3. All kinds of money, but no relationship with Dad. These are sad things. We need to begin to understand about relationships and what brings great relationships. How we can heal these relationships. Some of us are in marriages that are not happy. They're not intimate. There's no bonding. There's very little bonding. And we're worried about it. We just say, well, that's the way it's got to be. We feel stuck. Every once in a while we'll make a sincere effort to have a better relationship, to develop communications or work with our children better. And pretty soon we're right back where we were. Nothing has happened. Nothing big has happened. And we're right back where we were. And pretty soon we come to a point where we really, truly believe that we will never be able to enjoy those relationships, the warmth, the intimacies that we dream of, that our hearts need. Now we're going to stumble along and be in pain until we learn what we're doing that's wrong, and until we're willing to gain the knowledge and the intelligence to get those things in our heads that will straighten our thinking out to where we'll be able to relate to other people like this. I came from a very dysfunctional home. Papa was alcoholic and Mother was a codependent. Mother's job in life, you see, Dad was addicted to the alcohol and Mom was addicted to saving the alcoholic. And so her life and the family's life revolved around fixing Papa. And Papa was always going to quit drinking. He was going to stop doing these things. And Mama was going to divorce him or whatever, the threat after threat. I went to 14 schools before I graduated from high school. It's a wonder I can read. But as a matter of fact, as they struggled and had their problems, we as children were taught to focus on Mom and Dad's problems, not to focus on our needs, not to focus on what we needed, but to focus on Mom and Dad, because they were so having such a hard time with their relationship. It was so dysfunctional and painful that all they could do was put their energy into that. And when the kids came, they kind of weren't there emotionally for us, especially Papa. Papa was addicted to crisis. He was addicted to the bottle. Wherever we went, anywhere, Papa had to end up getting mad at everybody. He couldn't stand a peaceful situation. He had to stir it up. And over the years, in ever more clever ways, he required and demanded the focus of the family. And the strength of the family went into that alcoholic behavior. And so Mom was supposed to save him, and the kids were trained to save him. And so Mom, in our home, we developed these codependent people. Codependent people, you see, are always worried about everybody else's problems. I was made to feel selfish if I brought my problems up in the home, because they had these big problems. And so, codependency is a loss of relationship with self. Codependency is when I am not in touch with my feelings, my thoughts, my needs anymore. I'm taught that that's selfish, and so I don't think about these. I don't take care of these. What I do is think about other people and fixing them. A codependent is a person that's involved in so many other people's lives and fixing other people, they don't have a life of themselves. We have kind of a joke about it. If a codependent is ever in an accident and almost killed, somebody else's life flashes before them. Now, that's sad. That's sad. We need our own lives. Now, let's look at this a little bit. I'll give you some qualifications or my background a little bit. That was a wonderful introduction, and I appreciate those kind words. I have a master's degree in marriage, family, and child counseling. I've been a social worker with the Department of Social Services in California, aid to families with dependent children. I have been counseling since 1966. That's some 32 years. And I want to tell you, there was a time when I did not have much sympathy for people who were having problems with their kids. Because I'd been to school and I had studied it. And I had a good chance. I had good results with my kids. My first 3 kids were easy. I thought I was a wonderful parent. I was just lucky. And I thought if you just talked to your kids, you just loved them enough, and you just talked to your kids enough, that everything would be okay, because kids are smart. And if they're going upside down or going off the wrong direction, just sit them down. Just talk to them. Hold their hand, look into their eyes, tell them you love them, and talk to them and explain it to them, and they'll turn around and be okay. Anybody ever thought of that? Anybody ever been told that? That's baloney. Anyway, I was telling people to go home and talk to their kids. Now, when Danny came along, he challenged everything I ever knew. He challenged way beyond my capacity to deal with him. He got into my face and he said, I'm going to live my life. It's my life, and I have the right to live my life and do what I want to do. And it's nobody else's business. And I said, Danny, you don't understand. Drugs are terrible. Danny got introduced to drugs by friends at church. I was ready to go down and shoot somebody. I was really mad. That one kind of snuck up on me there. And so I was upset about it. But Danny would have found them somewhere, right? You can't keep your kids from drugs. You can't protect them from what's out there. You can teach them and set a good example and hope for them, but you cannot shelter them. And so as Danny began to go upside down, I started reevaluating all this counseling that I had been trained in, all this education that I had. And I saw that it didn't work. And I went here and that didn't work. And I went here and that didn't work. And nobody could help us. And I was really desperate. My kid was drowning. He was dying. And nobody could help us. And I had to go back and reevaluate my whole basic philosophies about life, about relationships. And I came to a point and I turned a corner where all of a sudden I began to realize that you can't make people do things. You can't make your kids study. You can't make them be good. You can't make them clean their rooms. You can try, you can threaten, you can be angry, but when push comes to shove, if you have a child that wants to go out and get drunk, they're 15 years old, I don't think there's a parent in here that could stop that child. What are you going to do, lock them up? They're going to find something to drink somewhere. They're going to find something to smoke somewhere. If a child is bound and determined to do something, a parent is helpless. And so I had to face that. I had to come to a place where I began to acknowledge my limitations as a parent, as a man. That I had limitations. That I had limitations to my strength, the number of hours of the day I could chase that kid, my emotions, everything, my finances, all had a limit. And I had to deal with those human limits of myself. All these unrealistic expectations that I had about this perfect family, about all these children who loved their daddy. It wasn't always true, and I had to live with that. All right, let's go on. I had stopped doing individual family counseling because I found that I was telling everybody the same thing and repeating it week after week after week. I found that people needed education more than they needed counseling. And if they had good education, most of the counseling was unnecessary. I believe that we need to teach our people to fish, not give them a fish. I believe that we should teach them, and I believe that you can learn anything that I have learned. I believe that you don't have to have a PhD to raise a healthy child. I believe that if you love your child and you have an environment of consecration and you require that they work and that you develop the relationships and require accountability and responsibility, then always unconditional love, that you can raise healthy children. And this is about being good parents. It is not about assuring that your kids are going to come out a certain way. We do not have any guarantees. You can be an absolutely perfect parent. The problem of our parents today is that they do not know what correct parenting principles are. And so they're going along pretty good. And things are working pretty good. And then something comes along to challenge everything. And so they crack down and they go back to their methods and they really look at it and they crack down more and the kid goes off further. And then that parent begins to challenge their own thinking. Is this right? Is this wrong? And then they waffle. And until you know what is correct, you will be tossed back and forth. You can do the right thing and the kids still do the wrong things. Do you believe that? And you need to understand that. And this is one of the big concepts that we'll deal with today. Personal and family experience. I've talked about that a little bit. What is a parent trap? A parent trap is a dysfunctional, self-defeating pattern of behavior that well-intending parents often fall into when they're attempting to what? Control what? Control their children. They want to control that behavior. When parents attempt to control their children, they always fall into what we call parent traps. Now, what is this parent trap? It's where we are trying to get our kids to do what is right. They won't do it, and so we get frustrated. Frustration leads to anger. We get frightened. We feel guilty. We have fear. And this fear turns to anger. And so, because we do not know the right way to behave as a parent, pretty soon we're acting angry in order to intimidate these kids, in order to make them do what is right. We start to criticize. We begin to argue. We lecture. We threaten. We discount them. We rescue them. We put them on teenage retirement. That's when they don't have to work at all. We're going to talk about that in the last half this evening. We have a favorite child. We start to shame them. We start to criticize. Does this make sense? And it's all because we love them. But we have this idea, this big parent trap. And this is what's in our head. And this is what is part of what must be exercised. It has to come out. If the kids are acting out in the neighborhood and they're being sneaky, what is the first thing you think of? Those parents need to crack down. Isn't that true? Those parents need to get that kid, what? Back in control. There's a book written out there by that title. And so the issue is about control. And the false idea is that good parents produce good kids and bad parents produce bad kids. And that if a parent loves that child enough, the parent can come up with this miracle of whatever it is to get inside that kid's head and to change that behavior. And so we have this lie that good parents are able or should control their children. They're able to control their children. And that's a parent's responsibility and duty. To be considered good parents, you have to be in control. Do you have a little piece of that? Do you? You bet you do. All right, let's look at this. There are two opposing ideas that underlie our beliefs, our philosophies about the nature of man. And one of them is that man is a free agent. That man is free to choose. That man has the capacity to choose. And because he has that capacity to choose and make choices, right, then he has to be held accountable. He has to be responsible for those decisions. And that if he is accountable and he has the power to choose, then he can earn rewards or be punished according to his choices. We also have wrapped up in that package the fact that children, men, when they make choices, being inexperienced, they will definitely make mistakes. They will make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. And we don't have to get all angry and upset when people make mistakes. That is part of the learning equation. So we accept these children. We don't treat them stupid. We know that we never make mistakes that we're too smart to make. That in the universe there is no loss. That we do not make mistakes that we're too smart to make. We only make mistakes that we need to make because we're stupid about that point. And so we're going to suffer and we're going to learn. We're going to go through the painful process of learning that was wrong. And so mistakes are important. We learn from mistakes. And to be honest with you, I have learned more from the hardships, the mistakes I've made in life, than I have from the easy times and the successes. Many of you would agree with that. But then there's another group that believes that people are not innately good, that they shouldn't be given their free choice, that they should be told what to do, and we, who know better, will force them. Whether it's taking music or it's taking this or that, we're going to force them because we are more intelligent, and we're going to make sure that they do what is right. And that's our duty. And we're justified in making them do these things because it's for their own good, and they'll thank us later. You ever think like that? Ever hear that kind of thinking? That's off the dark side there. My wife loved piano, but they were so poor in her house where she came from that they couldn't take piano lessons. Now, my wife's mother played wonderfully. She played, and my wife wanted to play but couldn't. My wife swore that when she had kids, they would get to take piano. Isn't that wonderful? So our kids had to take piano. And they swore their kids would never have to take piano. So in the Jones family, every other generation does piano. And that's the way it works. Isn't that wonderful? Well, the idea is we know what's best for these people. Therefore, we are justifying and coercing them. Now, the problem with that program is that any family, any government, any institution that is set up on coercion and force must be maintained by force. Do you agree? Because sooner or later, a family that's built on force, those kids will rebel. In fact, they'll rebel anytime, sometimes, won't they? If it's in their nature to rebel and to learn. But there's this side then. Now, this side has a hard thing because you can't force people. But they believe it's their duty to force. It's their duty to make these people do the piano and make them do their studies and get in there and go to sleep, Johnny. And they think they've got to do that. Did you ever try to make a kid study? It's really hard. I'm in education, and it's important to me that my children study. And so I was after them all the time. You get in there and study. From 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock, no nothing. You get in there and you study. You got to bring these grades up. It's important that you don't bring your family back to me to support them because you couldn't get an education. Now you get out there, you study. Can you make a kid study? Johnny, you pick up your pencil, son, and do your math. Pick up this pencil. Hold a pencil. Hold a pencil like this. I'm too tired. I can't hold a pencil. How are you going to make somebody hold a pencil? You read. Can you make somebody focus their eyes? You read, and you get to sleep too, you kids in there. You get to sleep. Do you hear me? Don't make me come in there. You get to sleep. I figured out a way to get kids to sleep. You rock them to sleep. It takes a rock about that big, okay? You don't go to sleep. You can't force people. Now, the problem with this program over here that says that we can force and we should force and we're justified in forcing, the problem is this is an impossible task. And it makes everybody upset because you can't force them, so they get angry. And so there's anger here, and intimidation here, and fear here. Does that make any sense to anybody? And so how's it going over to your house? You have to think about it. Which of these two philosophies do you believe in? Well, Danny was in the drug place. He was going upside down. And I says, I'm going over here and do this stuff. Now, I will run your life, son, until you get your brain back, okay? And you just listen to Papa. We're going to use this program till you come out of it, and then we'll go over here and use this other program. But for right now, this sounds pretty good. All right, so we get stuck there. Okay, there are two simple truths. Man is a free being with choice and will resist coercion and will eventually rebel against it. Do you believe this? These kids get into this holy war to rebel against their parents. A government and family, institution, etc., built up by force can only be maintained by what? Force. Okay. Our control madness. Why do we argue, criticize, nag, yell, worry, and get so angry at our children? Generally because we're trying to control them and to get them to see things our way so that they will do what we know is best for them. True or false? Yeah, we, the smarter people. Now, that doesn't mean you let little Herkimer play out in the road. He's 2 years old. So the guy down there parenting said, they got to, they're going to do their thing. You can't force them. I told the little turkey, don't go out in the road. In fact, I told him twice. Here comes a truck. Boy, this is going to be quite a lesson today. Wham, You take a little 2-year-old and you put him in the backyard and you lock the gate. Isn't that true? So there's an age-appropriate application to all of these principles. And when they get a little older, then there's new principles that you use. Is that true? So, all right. I think we can see that. We got sense enough to see that, don't we? Now, the parent who is into control, who believes that being a good parent, boy, that kid's going to have that room done, and they're going to have their studies done, and they wear the right clothes to school, and they do this thing at church, and they do this thing at Scouts or whatever it is. And those kids, boy, mom and dad have really everything under control. And these kids, this family, look so good. And they all sit there. Sometimes they're the sickest family in the whole block, but boy, do they look good. And the reason they're looking good is because they think it's important to look good. They're trying to cover up all the junk. Is that true? So they're into appearances and they're trying to look good. So this parent is into control. In fact, those of us who feel so shamed and who feel so dysfunctional and feel so bad, we have this madness to control. And when things start to get out of control, my anxiety level gets higher, higher and higher and higher. And the only way I can keep my anxiety level down is to what? Control. Now some people when their anxiety gets up, they get a shot of booze and it settles them down. Is that right? Some people when their anxiety gets up, they go eat a chocolate cake. Is that right? Can food become addictive? Can we medicate our anxiety? Can we medicate our pain with food? Yes or no? With buying? You bet. With alcohol? With a cigarette? With drugs, chemicals? Yes. Can you medicate your anxiety by controlling? Can it become addictive? Absolutely. It can become very addictive. And some of us are perfectionists and controllers, and that's the only way we're able to keep our anxiety down in life. To be in control all the time. And things get out of control, we go ballistic. We can't handle that. So the parent who is into control, they're going to make an attempt to control their child. Is that right? And sooner or later that child is going to rebel. They're going to be non-compliant. And then the parent does what? They get tighter controls. Boy, I had Danny, grounded for like 300 years one time. It just got worse and worse. He didn't even care. He'd come walking through the door and he'd say, "What's the sentence today?" As he made his way to the bedroom. Because I'd find his room was messy and you know what I mean. Because I was a good father. I was on him, boy. You bet. All right, now, so I attempt tighter control. What happens? The child still refuses to comply. You guys hear this? And then what happens? The parent feels failure. They feel impotent, and they're fearful. This child is not doing well in school. They're not showing up at church. They're not doing their scout work. They're off with these goofy friends with this bad music and the green hair. And the parent gets a lot of anxiety. Is that true? Now, to get the anxiety level down, what's that parent going to do? Stronger methods of control. Is that right? And stronger methods of control, what's the result? Child is still non-compliant. And the child will be defiant. Danny told me, "Get out of my face. This is my life, Papa. Don't you get it? Leave me alone. It's my life. If I want to jump off a bridge, I can do it. If I want to kill myself with drugs, I can do it." I said, I guess you could, but why? Why? I don't understand. But the idea was that Danny was still non-compliant, and he was defiant. Because we were in this control battle. Who's going to run his life? So what happens? Anger, rage, intimidation, coercion by the parent. How is a child going to react to that? How is a child going to react to that? Feelings of resentment, rebellion. This is called the control, rebellion, rage cycle. Do you see it? There's no place to win on this. This is the merry-go-round of insanity. And as you try to control, and you're over here in this camp trying to control other people's lives, and you're trying to make them do stuff, you're taking over their lives. When you take over their life, you don't leave much for them. And so they don't take responsibility for their education. They get locked in this control battle. And whenever you're in a control battle with a kid, they lose sight of their own sense of responsibility for whatever, whether you're controlling about education or friends or music or whatever. Making sense, anybody? This over here is a losing deal. All right. Mission Impossible. We have been pre-programmed with the false ideas and traditions, and therefore hold many unrealistic expectations about our roles and responsibilities as parents. Sadly, we have little knowledge of correct parenting principles. It's really true. You didn't get any book with that kid, did you? Remember we joke about you got to have a license to mow lawns in town? Is that true? A business, you don't have to have a license. It's tragic. And after we have our child, we just fly by the seat of our pants. And most of us are just doing the same thing our families did, passing down the same dysfunctional ideas and thoughts. We parents are set up to feel that we are the failures if our children do not or will not constantly measure up. Is that true? Now, if you have Mission Impossible in your head, you have a false idea. Because you're supposed to be over here. You're supposed to believe that you cannot and should not control other people. That they are to make their own decisions. That they have to make their own mistakes. That they have a right to their own feelings and thoughts. And we should honor that. And never, never overcome another person's will like that. I'm not talking about pulling a little kid off the street now. You know the difference here. All right. So if you've got false ideas, and those are the ideas and the concepts you have, when you can't do it, then you feel terrible because you feel like a failure. And when you are frustrated and you get angry, don't you? You get frustrated and you get angry. And those feelings drive screwy behavior. Those feelings drive rage, criticism, threatening, intimidation, verbal and physical abuse. Because the feelings are so powerful, and the feelings are generated from these wrong ideas and wrong concepts. So we got the wrong idea, we feel like failures, we have fear, we have anxiety. Those feelings drive the bad behavior. So we've got to get inside people's heads. People can never progress if they don't get more information. You just don't decide you're going to do something. You have to change the program. You have to have this, what they call this paradigm shift. You have to see your role differently. You have to get new information if you're going to have any kind of a change. So what we do is we get new ideas. The model that we need to begin with is over here. A model where we acknowledge that kids have their choice. And you ask the child, because they will tell you when they're 10 or 12, you can't make me. And they're right. And Papa say, well, I can sit on you. And he can for a while. I've counseled men with broken ribs who have been hit so hard with by their son with this fist that the men had broken ribs sitting in my office. You can't maintain that kind of government. Sooner or later they will rebel and resent it. And so, what we have here is the right idea that people can and they ought to make their own choices and be held strictly accountable. And there should be consequences which teach them the good things from the bad things. All right, now once we have the true ideas in our minds and we recognize that this child is going to make mistakes and that after we have taught them and loved them that we have done what we should, that we labor with them, we exercise patience and gentleness and kindness with them, now we do not have feelings that are negative. We have good feelings. We have faith and trust in them. We believe in the child. We're grateful for opportunities and there's peace in our heart. And when you have peace in your heart and you're not all upset and angry about what these kids are doing because you can't control them, then you don't act like a moron. Then you can exercise patience. And you can give the kids a feeling that you love them and accept them and you can be kind to them and patient with them. Where else could anybody ever get an opportunity to develop patience and kindness except in this fiery furnace of raising kids? This is the greatest, the biggest task I've ever faced in my life. I thought it was tough when I got married. It was easy being single. I'd go out and have fun and whatever. It was easy. Now I come back, I got to make my wife happy. See, now I get married. I mean, I never knew what true happiness was till I got married. Of course, then it was too late, you see. But at any rate, I tell everybody my wife and I have had, 19 years of beautiful married life. And that's not bad out of 39, because when you consider everything, all right, do you understand that you cannot be patient and kind and gentle and loving and give love messages when you're feeling guilty and angry because this kid isn't doing what they should do? We've got to realize that children are going to make the mistakes they need to make, and there's nothing parents really can do. All right. When Danny was in drug rehab, he was screaming at me, leave me alone, leave me alone. And I don't give up easy. But Danny was hollering. And he said, get out of my life. I said, Danny, you're 16. I said, you don't know up from down, son. You're in jail now. He had a choice to go to jail for a long time or go to drug rehab. He picked drug rehab. So he was in a residency program all night, all day. And he was so slick. He conned everybody in that rehab place. The people there, those counselors there with PhDs and all that other stuff, they got sucked in by this kid. He says, Danny's the greatest kid we ever had come through the program. Danny advanced up through their ranks faster than anybody else. Danny told me, he says, I know what to tell adults. I know what they want to hear. And he conned them. And after a year and a half or so, he ran away. But before he did that, he was sitting in the chair impressing them one time. Out of his chair, we were sitting in a little circle. He was waving his arms and doing his thing in front of the counselor. And he was yelling, "Leave me alone. All you want to do is control my life." Was he right? Was I trying to control his life? Absolutely. If I had had the ability at that time, I would have taken away his free choice and said, "When you get your brain back, we'll talk about it." Okay? That's what I would have done, because I was convinced he was going to kill himself. And he was telling me, "Dad, leave me alone." And I said, "Okay, Danny, that's what you want." Now, this is after several years. I stood up and I walked across that little circle of chairs and I said, "Okay, hotshot, you want to have your life, you got it." I said, "I take all the responsibility for your life off of my shoulders right here and now, son, and I put it on you. And you'd better be careful, because I'm putting it on you. You're responsible for what happens to you, not me. And I'm throwing you out in the deep sea, Danny, with the shark and the barracuda, and they're going to kill you. They're going to eat you up. You are going to die." In fact, I was already starting to process his death, because that's what I was looking at. And he says, "I can live my own life." And I said, "You have been living your own life. I haven't got you here." I was really talking to myself halfway here. And he says, "I can live my own life." I said, "Yes, you can live your own life. You've been doing it. You are responsible. Don't hold me responsible for jail or anything that happens to you from now on. You got to pick it up, buddy. I can't do it. You whipped me." Every day I would try to fix him. Every day he'd try to do something stupid. Who won that game every day? He did. He won it every day. I was a nervous wreck. I couldn't work. I'd be up chasing him all night. He'd sleep during the day. I'd try to work during the day. Can't hardly think. Come home, he's run away again. I'd chase him. I was obsessive with this kid. I felt it was my job. I would never let him go. I could never let him go. Now, he had this girlfriend that he'd been going with that was not, really the type of girl that you want in the family. All I can say is she was very available to everybody. And we'll call her Susie. And he'd been going with her. But before that, I told him, I said, "There's this one girl Papa sees, son. She's like, Daddy can see it. Papas know sometimes. And this girl is trouble with a capital T in River City, baby. Don't go with her." And he said, "Who?" And I told him, they've written a book. They've done a study on kids of psychologists. We will not discuss it. All right. And I said, "Don't go with this one." And it was just like glue on glue, wasn't it? And they just put them right together. And they were in love. And they would walk up and down in front of the house, and I was so hooked. I'd run from the windows in my house, watch them back and forth. They walk down there, and then they'd walk back, and I'd watch them, just praying nothing would happen to him. And see, all he would do is punch the button. Watch Papa jump. Dum, bum, bum, bum. Boop, 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 boop. And watch him cry. Watch Papa not sleep all night. I can do this. He was out there punching buttons. I'm telling you, you can set more fires than you can put out. Do you believe that? Yeah. Anyhow, Danny was out there. My life was miserable. And he says, "You mean I can live my own life?" I said, "Yes, son. Live your own life." He says, "Will you let me marry Susie?" Shot me right through the head. I'll call you and raise you 10. Is that what he was doing? Boy, it would take me forever to come up with a response like that. "Can I marry Susie?" And I heard myself talk. I was in the spirit. I said, "Of course. I give my permission." My wife made kind of a choking sound. I was sitting here. Can you just see this at the wedding reception? This is our daughter-in-law. You all know Susie. The Susie. Yeah, you know her. Yeah. He says, my son says, "Dad, you're kidding? You'll let me marry her?" I said, "Yes, you deserve each other." God bless you, my children. Just live far away. He says, "Papa, you're nuts. You'd let me marry her?" The Susie. Yeah, the Susie. He says, "Dad, you really let me marry her?" I says, "Go get the paper now. Let me sign it." My wife's digging into my arm with her fingers over here. I says, "Yes, son. Go forth and be happy." He says, "Marry her?" Now, what had they been talking about walking up and down in front of the house? "Oh, if our parents would only let us marry, we could be happy. But our wicked parents..." On and on like that. Can't you just say it? Now I says, "Marry the turkey." Yeah? Who's got the problem now? Who's shouldering the burden for the first time when I dumped it onto him? I says, you go ahead and do what you want. And he went just like this. He had one hand on the chair and he puts the other hand up here and he says, really? Marry her? I says, that's what you want? That's what you've been begging for? He says, Papa, I don't even like her. I almost passed out. Almost fell right out of my chair. What had this been about? What had this been about? It was control. It was control. And when I took control of his life, he didn't have responsibility. Is that true? I said, you can't marry her. You know? You don't know. You don't understand. Pardon me. You know, but these kids, what do they know about love? Anyhow, it was just to punch my buttons. Whenever you get into a power struggle with a kid, the issue of their personal responsibility around the issue is fogged out. They don't pick it up. You start arguing about their body, keeping it clean, they don't care. They're into this holy battle for what? Freedom. And they justify themselves. You know, don't jump off the cliff. Whoop, there they go. It's just that dumb. It really is. All right. Danny in drug rehab. Continually trying to control what we cannot and should not control is the cause of most of our anxiety and stress and destructive anger in life. Would you agree? Yes. Involving ourselves trying to fix some irresponsible person who continues to make all these dumb choices, and we're taking on our responsibility that we got to save them. Now, some of you are sitting here thinking, oh, so-and-so needs to be here to hear that. So-and-so, all you codependents, that's what you're thinking. How many have thought of that already? Codependents? Take care of your own stuff, right? Okay. We codependents, we've been sent to save the world from all you poor people that don't know any better. Yeah. Okay. We can have peace and get control of our own lives again only when we give up trying to control and rescue others who continue to make irresponsible choices. Would you buy that? You bet. If we love and teach our children to do what is right, we are not responsible for the lives they choose to live. And that is a fact. But some parents are so much into their own image that they're hammering this kid to make him do good in school because the parent thinks it makes them look good. Like they got it all together. And we've missed the whole point. We are so phony. We're into our own image. And some parents hammering these kids and not doing for the kids what the kids need to have done for them. The parents are doing what the parents want done for the parents at the sacrifice of their kids. Sometimes parents rescue them and give them money when the kid won't earn it, etc. We're going to talk about that too. All right, let's look at this. This is the parable of the seeds. A sorrowful man came to the prophet and said, I am the father of a wayward son who has broken his faithful mother's heart, that her tears dry not up, and she cannot be comforted. What wisdom can we know to endure our grief? The prophet perceived the man was good and said, hear the parable of the seeds. The Lord gave unto his servants seed to plant in his fields. Each received according to the will and wisdom of the Lord. What manner of seeds are these? Asked the servants. That is not for you to know at this time. But I know what kinds of seeds they are. Plant them, water them, fertilize them, weed them, and protect them from predators. And you will discover for yourselves what kinds of seeds these are. The faithful servants went forth and planted the seeds and began to tend the fields according to their desires and skills. They labored diligently and brought forth beautiful vegetables and flowers. But to their great disappointment there were certain weeds and thorny plants that sprang up and tormented their hearts. These servants cried unto the Lord, however faithfully we labor, we cannot get the thorny plants to produce good fruit. Why have you given us noxious weeds and thorny bushes amongst our fruitful plants to take away our joy? Who are the seeds? The children. Who are the servants? The parents, obviously. And the Lord answered, this is wisdom in me. Tend to them and labor with them. For it is not the same season for all seed. And in their maturity some thorny bushes produce a blossom of the most desirable fragrance and delicious fruit, notwithstanding the bitter season. Call no seed evil, for I, the Lord of the fields, have judged all my seed worthy of life. Do not be downcast, for power is not given you to change the nature of any seed. You did not create the seed. You are only able to help the seed become what it is. The unfaithful servants planted their seeds. They did not water well, but the Lord rained upon the land, and the seed sprouted and survived. The unfaithful servants did not fertilize, but the Lord provided sufficient nourishment from the earth. Nor did the unfaithful servants weed their fields, so that weeds grew up in great abundance and tried to choke out the good seeds. The good seeds were much afflicted because of the neglect of the unfaithful servants, but they struggled and survived. And even in the fields of the unfaithful servants, nature prevailed. Vegetable seed became vegetable. The fruit seed sprouted and bore fruit, each after its kind. And the seed of the thorny bushes and noxious weeds sprouted, each after its kind. And some of the thorny bushes in time bore delicious fruit, even as the Lord had said. Then in the harvest the faithful servants were blessed and honored, and had great joy. But the unfaithful servants received no more seed forever. This has some deep meaning. There was a farmer, a good farmer, who found a seed. And being a just man, he wanted to give this seed all the advantages that he possibly could. And he was a farmer that was renowned for all his beautiful rose bushes throughout the whole world. And if you looked over his farmland, you could see acres and acres and acres of beautiful, beautiful roses. And so wanting to give this seed the most benefit that he could, he took this seed and he planted it in the most choice part of all his garden. And as he planted this seed, he poured rose water on it. And he sang a rose lullaby. And he fed it rose food. And the plant germinated after a few days, and it began to sprout. And this little teeny tender green shoot came up out of the rose bed. And all this little plant saw was roses and smelled beautiful rose fragrance. The beautiful grandma rose and grandpa rose. And more rose water and more rose food. But it grew into a carrot. And the farmer was horrified and said, "What have I done? Where have I failed? What more could I have done to make this seed a rose?" And he felt guilty and beat himself up and whipped himself and flogged himself until he came to a parenting class and found out that he had some wrong ideas. Can we change the nature of a seed? Wherever you plant a carrot in this earth, if it's possible to grow anything there, what will that carrot seed come up? A carrot. What will a rose bush do? It'll produce roses. And so each of us, you see, has to realize that our influence, although tremendous as parents, is only influential. It is not deterministic. And what that child decides to do with their life depends on what they choose to do. I do not have to be a gambler. I do not have to be an abuser. I don't have to be an alcoholic. I don't have to be that. I have a choice. I have a will. And although I have tendencies and I'm obsessive compulsive, and some of that anger, some of that rage has come down from generation to generation, I don't have to buy into it, and I can resist it and not pass it on. Do you believe that? I don't have to be autocratic. I don't have to demand that my kids do this. Papa believed that he had to whip you and knock you around so you wouldn't get ruined. All right? And so if I ever got that look on my face or that certain tone in my voice, I got hit hard from any angle, anywhere, with anything. Do you believe that? And so that is shaming, because a kid thinks parents are wonderful. And this child believes that parents are right. And if there's something wrong, it's me. And that's a shaming process. All right, let's look at this. Anger. How many of you get angry at your kids? Raise your hands. Even raging? Boy, that was almost every hand, wasn't it? You get angry. Why do you get angry? It's because we don't understand the truth. Once we understand the truth, there's no need to get angry like that. And there's no need to rage. Let's look at this. I'm going to talk to you about this. Anger is a secondary emotion. Anger itself is not a primary emotion. Anger comes when you've been frustrated in getting your goal. When you've been frightened and frightened and frightened, and now you're not going to be frightened anymore. When you've been humiliated and humiliated, and now you're not going to take it anymore. And you convert all that vulnerability, all that weakness, all that pain into action and anger, which motivates you and drives you now to do something, however stupid it might be. But anger has a demand in it. Anger comes from people who are helpless, who are impotent. And that's why they're raging. That's why they're angry. Because they're so frustrated. And some of you come home at night and you even act angry. You get in here, you get this room cleaned up. Is that true? And the kids do it. Wow, Daddy's mad. And they come in and they do it. Because you scared them. And it works. Anger seems to work. Anger is the pathetic cry of the impotent. Remember, we choose to be angry. Nobody makes you angry. Don't ever tell them, you make me angry. You are angry by choice. You feel impotent, frustrated, blocked in your goals, and so now you turn to anger to change the situation. Does that make sense? All right, let's look at this, Robinson family, okay? This is about teens in America, a story of love at home, about dads and moms, kids, housework, homework, dishes, TV, and murder. Actually murder. You guys seen the rage gauge? You know what that is? It's behind your icebox at home. Go home and check it out. How many times do you ask your kids to do anything? Johnny, you come in here. You come in here. I'm not going to tell you again, son. I've told you 4 times to come in here. Don't make me come out there. You get in here. We're going to be on the 11 o'clock news. You don't get in here, boy. Your dad's going to kill you when he comes home. All right, 1. Did you hear me? That was 1, buddy. 2? That was 2. That was a big 2. You're going to die. Yeah. You better get here. Okay, 2.5. That's 2.5. 2 3/4. 2 7. You hear it? That's not how kids learn obedience in the United States. That's how we teach them their fractions. That's how they know. All right? And the problem is that when you do that, you teach them, don't listen to me the first time, the second time, the third time. Don't listen to me. I don't mean anything until I give you the whole show, the screaming and raging thing. All right, here it is. Now, these kids, this is the Robinson family. Dad has a job. And he works from 8 to 5, then he comes home, and he has another job in the garage making cabinets. So he works 16 hours a day. Mom works all day at home too, but at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, after she's fixed dinner for the family, she takes off for the hospital. And from 4 to midnight, she does bedpans and nurse's aid and stuff. And Dad, at least Dad gets to eat dinner with the kids. And so this is the typical thing. These kids are on teenage retirement. You know what teenage retirement is? We'll talk about that. Teenage retirement. So Dad gets upset already. He knows how hard it is to get them to do the dishes. When you tell the kids to do it, when you tell your children to go do the dishes, do they just jump up and do it? Thank you. We want to help. Do they do that? They don't do that. Not on this planet. They don't do that. Oh, somebody's hurt. They feel terrible. Like you stuck them with a bayonet or something. Oh, I didn't do it. But how come we have to do everything? Yeah. All right. So Dad says, now, I'm going to tell you something. In fact, he tells them 2 or 3 times right now. I'm not going to tell you again. This is what I'm going to tell you. As soon as you guys are done with dinner, I got to leave. Go in the garage and work. As soon as you kids are done with dinner, I want you to jump up and what, people? Do the dishes without any what? Without any fighting. What are you grinning at? I know. All right? And then as soon as your dishes are done, I want you to get in on what? Your homework. And then, as soon as the homework is done, then you may what? Watch TV. You guys already read the book, huh? You know this story? Okay, here we go. Now, he says, and I'm not going to tell you again. And off he goes. Now, people, use your imagination. You're not going to believe this. Use your imagination. He comes back in an hour to get a root beer out of the icebox. He goes over and he glances in the front room. What does he see? The kids are in there watching TV. How did you know that? And now he looks over at the dishes and they're still what? Still sitting right there getting hard. And so he does this Alzheimer's thing. Didn't I tell you kids to do the dishes? I told you don't watch TV. What's the matter with you people? You got brain damage? You can't remember anything? Get in here and do these dishes. What do the kids say? Dad, we got to watch this. We got to write a report for school. All 3 of you got to write a report for school? Yeah. Let us watch this, Papa. Okay, and Dad says what? Don't play with me. I'm nobody to mess with. You don't want me on your case. Okay, you watch that television. And when I get back in here, these dishes better be done. Don't mess with me or you will be sorry people. I will take you out. Dad, we got to watch this. They turn it up. He comes back in 3 or 4 more times during the night. Do you know what I mean? And they come back. You said you'd do the dishes. Is that the same program? Yeah, that is the same program. Of course, that's the same. That's 3 hours long. It's a long program and a long report. Yeah, okay. Does he get madder and madder and madder? Does he? And finally, he comes in. After asking 10 times. And he just blows. And this time the channel has been changed. It's 11:15. And he has had it. He comes in, and now they know this is it. They know this is it. Because when he gets to that point, he's actually dangerous. Because he's not in full control. But now kids are going to push him right up to that point, of course. Now, they will never respond and reward when Dad says, will you please do the dishes? They never reward that kind of behavior. They want the whole show. They want to see the father from hell. And they know this is it. Because when he gets to that point, the veins stand out on his neck. And there's a purple vein pops out on his forehead. And he kind of stiff when he walks. And his eyes bug. And he spits when he talks. And you can only understand about half of what he says. And he comes in and wham, and he hits it. Oh, hurts his hand. Those kids, they're gone, all 3 of them. They don't even turn their back on him. They walk through the kitchen. We're doing the dishes. We're doing the dishes. Why are you so upset, Papa? And now he's, The people down the block say, what happened to your Papa last night? They say, oh, it's our turn to do the dishes, and that's how we do them over our house. Now, Dad is screaming. Have you got the idea? Now, isn't this just what the neighbors do? Isn't that what your neighbors are doing all the time? Now, how many requests do you make before you start acting crazy? Huh? Where should we actually take... Does rage work? Did they really get up and go? Now, the thing is that you got to understand about this, that this idea that rage works is a wrong thought, is the wrong idea. Because, we could test this. We could put this variable out of here, and we could put the dad in a cage in the front room. So he couldn't get out. And he wouldn't be dangerous at all. Okay? And you could put him in there saying, make sure they do the dishes. He would be screaming, rattling the cages. Do the dishes! And the kids wouldn't care. They'd just dance around and poke him with a stick. They don't care. And he's going crazy, having a coronary arrest. Write this down. Your kids do not care about your mental health. They are not concerned at all about your mental health. They don't care. Now, kids have to have what we call an insurance whack. Because they don't always know for sure where the limit is. It's kind of out there. But they got to get it all, or they can't sleep nights. They just lay awake. Could I have gotten away with a little more? Did I give in too soon? And so once in a while they get in there and they push up against that limit. Dad goes, pow! Now that was it. Yeah, that was it. But sometimes there's a little more ground out there. They can push further. All this time they could have been doing wow. And now they get out there. You call up and hit a kid. Bam! Raymond, I told you 3 times to get out there and empty that trash. You deaf boy, get that, move on. Kid sliding across the floor. What'd you hit me for, Pa? You deaf boy? I told you 3 times to empty the trash. Well, Papa, you usually tell me 10 or 12 times. If you're going to change the rules, let me know. Do they know how far to go? Yes, they know how far to go. And they push you right up that limit. Now, that is insane. Why do you let that happen? What works? Action works. Why did those kids move? They were in fear of getting killed. Dad was actually out of hand. They know just what, he was just right after. They just kept just ahead of him. Sometimes the best advice you can give a kid when you're that mad is you just, run, son, run, before the monster gets you. Haven't you felt like that? Don't we get there? They push us all the way. You know that. All right. Action does it, not talk. You can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Your kids don't listen. You can talk, take out the trash, stop the fighting, feed the dog, pick up the grandma, blah, 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 blah. You can talk till your lips get cancer. And they can flop off and fall off on the floor. And they can bounce down the hall. And your kids don't care. Talk doesn't do it. What does it, people? Action, consequences. Talk will drive you crazy. And it continues to drive you crazy. All right, let's look at this. At what point should we take action? Right up on top here where everybody's screaming at request 10? How crazy do you want your house to be? You should take action down here. We should always take action here. Does that make any sense to anybody? Some others, I guess they think, I can go 20 times before I kill somebody. You know, I'm really good at the resistance.